Conquer the Noise is a podcast produced by Unconquered, an independent agency challenging brand perspective through redefined content. This podcast is dedicated to telling stories of outstanding ideas and people who have found their way amongst the chatter. Hi everyone, this is Jonathan Hansen, your host of Conquer the Noise. In this week's episode, we speak with Ravi Mikkelsen, co-founder at Atmos Financial, which is a fintech startup. We're going to speak to how Ravi is leading the way as an alternative using big banks for personal banking. Most of our banking institutions use customer deposits to fund loans to support fossil fuels. Atmos is doing the opposite of that. Once they build up a sufficient deposit base, Atmos will transform those deposits into direct action on climate change by making loans to fund clean energy. They work to support renewable energy, regenerative agriculture, electric transportation, and weather resilience, among other things. Thank you, Ravi, for joining us today. I appreciate you coming on. Where do we find you today?
Currently, I am up in Seattle, Washington. Normally, I'm based in Oakland, California.
So what brings you up to Seattle? Are you traveling, visiting family?
Visiting family. My mom is going to be joining my wife and I down in Oakland for the next few months as we expect her first grandkid. So
exciting.
Our first child. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So we're helping her to pack up her home. And so I'm just using a spare office, her spare office.
I'm sure she's ecstatic.
Incredibly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You wouldn't believe. She's been waiting a while for her to be a grandmother.
Same. I still don't have kids, and I'm reminded of it all the time. I just saw my mother last weekend for her birthday, and I think she mentioned it every day I was up there. So I am with you on that. So that's a big life change for you. How are you managing that and balancing expecting child, new fintech startup? It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's incredible. Being disciplined in my schedule of getting up early, working out, having personal time.
Yeah.
Cutting out the unnecessary, distracting, detrimental activities, and also food. So it's like making sure that I'm supported. Just, it's the only way to do it in a sustainable fashion.
Yeah, my business partner has 2 kids, and earlier when we were first starting the business, and he had just had his second, and I was like, how do you do all this? And that was his same approach: is just create a schedule and stick to it, be disciplined in it, and you'll get everything done you need. But it's all about the schedule. So you've been working with Atmos. You started this company. I came about and discovered your business after just doing my own research in banking, and that started from I've been a Bank of America customer for maybe 10 years, and after the riots or the storming of the Capitol, or whatever you want to call that experience, Bank of America ended up releasing all of the records for customers that had transactions in the DC area to the government, and that immediately it didn't sit right with me. So I started really kind of digging into the banking world, and regardless if where you sit on the whole June 6th or January 6th storming of the Capitol, that's not the issue that I'm really getting at here. It's more the banking's privacy and willingness to just hand over customer data. So that's what got me really started digging in. I started finding a variety of other alternatives to banking that offer more of an environmental footprint, or have a different stance on banking and how money is used. So I would love to just sort of talk through, what you would say that makes Atmos different than a lot of the big banks that are out there, like Bank of America, JP Morgan, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for one, the biggest one is that we are not a bank. We are a banking startup. We provide FDIC insured bank accounts through our bank partner. But just for legal purposes, I just make clear that we are not a bank.
Yeah.
We do not advertise ourselves that way. And also because of that, it allows us a little bit more freedom in what we do. We do have the regulatory guidelines and compliance from our bank partner about how to operate safely in this environment. But we can be more creative in how we deploy capital and things like that. And we want to align incentives. So rather than charge all of these minimum balance fees and all these different fees and try and predate upon our customers, we want to be partners with them and align incentives, because our mission is to finance the rapid transition to the clean economy for absolutely everyone. And so that means we need to think differently than how it's been done in the past, and who gets access to credit, and how we build an inclusive and equitable economy that's also climate positive.
So I sign up. So I'd like to just walk through the process of like signing up. So I sign up for Atmos. I transfer money from my savings account over to the bank that you're working with, correct?
Right. So look, it's like you start your stopwatch, you come to our website, somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds later, you now have an Atmos account, and another 30 seconds to 2 minutes after that, you've connected to your Bank of America account and have initiated a transfer from them into your Atmos savings account. What we're calling your Atmos action account, because we want everyone to know is that your deposits are going towards climate action. They're not just sitting there. They're not going towards fossil fuels or to prisons or anything like that. They're going to fund climate positive infrastructure, like clean energy, like electrification, like regenerative agriculture, like more housing. And so it's a very fast process. You said sort of earlier, one big driver of where people bank is convenience. I grew up, I go to the bank that's just down the street from me. My parents banked there, my grandparents banked there. We just do that. And now it's like, you go down the street, well, your bank is in your pocket. And it's like, who's got the best apps? The big banks have billions of dollars to spend on their technology. So it's very convenient to open accounts with them digitally. So more people are going that way. The community banks, the credit unions, the people who've been focused on your local community don't have the same resources, so don't offer the same level of convenience. As a fintech, that is our role. That is one of our primary benefits, is building beautiful, easeful, useful technology. Like I said, it takes around a minute to open an account with us. And then it takes another 1 to 2 minutes to move money over. So it's very fast. It's, we think beautiful, and we're continue to make it better. It's not one and done. It's an ever evolving process to improve the product that we offer to our customers.
Well, one of the things that I found really compelling, at least on the spending time on your website, is the talk and messaging around values and making it clear what you all stand for. Versus you don't really get, when you traditionally look at other banking institutions, values rarely come up as far as like where your money is going, how they like to use your money, the philosophy of investing, lending, etc. So what are some of these like core values that are ultimately driving the steam and the energy behind Atmos?
One is like right at the top of our About Us page in our values. So on the About Us page, you see our vision and mission. You see a letter from Pete, my co-founder, and myself to everyone. And then you see our values, love, like our love for the planet, our love for each other. And that really drives us about how do we include everyone? There's a common saying within the clean energy community is that you can't have 100% clean energy unless 100% of the people have clean energy. So this previous focus on basically just the technology, or just deploying the technology for the wealthiest people in the world, isn't going to cut it. And it's like, we can take care of the societal issues later. It's like, no, we need to take care of everyone, because we're not going to change the world unless we change it for everyone. So that's sort of at our core. And then another one is, we say urgency with a bias towards action. And it's really taking this forward-leaning approach to moving faster. How do we get more people involved faster? How do we deploy capital more quickly, and changing the paradigm of what's possible? And another, continued learning. It's like we need to continue to get better. And that also, as that goes into the strength of a fintech startup, a financial technology startup, who, for those who haven't heard that term, is that we have this opportunity. So the legacy banks have processes that were developed decades or a century plus ago as the biggest banks, were started then. And those processes carried forward. We're starting from scratch. And so we can say, okay, what's new? What can we incorporate? How do we keep getting better? And so we can take these, and we're trying to work with some of these community banks, both the one, our direct partner, and then additional banks that we sign up, and taking these learnings and translating that into banker speak and translate that into processes that they understand, so that we can start to shift their mindset about deploying more capital towards this transition as well. And then,
I just want to stop just for a second, because I just want to make sure that I understand, and our listeners are understanding that. So basically, you sort of come in and work with the local banks, smaller banks, and work as a partner to help distribute capital to fund or loan out climate focused initiatives, businesses.
That's our longer term goal.
Okay.
Yeah. But right now, because we launched in January of this year.
Okay.
And
congratulations.
So thank you very much. It's quite exciting. And we're growing every week, new accounts, more deposits. And so we're in the process of signing contracts with banks to take our deposits and deploy them towards these climate positive infrastructure. And right now, it's starting with we're starting with banks that have existing lending practices, so that we don't need to provide the educational piece, provide the data around, these are good asset classes. They already know that, and they already do it. But what they can do is they can utilize our deposits to finance more of these projects.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's where we're starting. And then later this year, we will start our own direct lending program. And then that will then tie into the banks financing these as well.
Gotcha. So, when you're finding your partner banks, I imagine that's a whole process in itself, and one of the more important pieces of the puzzle here. So how are you vetting your banking partners?
So it's starting off with, so my co-founder, Peter Helwig, he worked for New Resource Bank, which is a B Corp bank in San Francisco, which was acquired by Amalgamated Bank out of New York. And so after the acquisition and through his career in banking, he's created a lot of relationships, as we all do.
Yeah.
And so we're starting with many of that network, or we are getting introduced through the B Corp network, through the 1% for Planet network. We're finding banks that have been vetted by these other communities, or that we have personal relationships to, and we know that are aligned with our mission. So we're starting there because it's the easiest. And
so, I think people's initial fears might be, is the FDIC insured? Is there encryption? What are the safety around transferring my money over there? So how are you guys mitigating that?
Sure thing. Safety is paramount to banking. I want to say it was Tim Geithner or Hank Paulson, who were members of the Treasury and the Fed, I believe, back during the financial crisis. And one of them said that trust is the currency of finance. And so it's about, we want to build trust. So that's both time and market, working with our partners, like trusted nonprofits, companies that already have that trust in market. But it's also about building security. So one, by partnering with an FDIC insured bank and how the deposits sit in those institutions, we can provide FDIC insurance through our partner banks. So people's deposits are FDIC insured up to the legal limit. And on the sort of cybersecurity side, the table stakes is really using SSL technology, the little lock that you see up in the corner of the address bar. It's SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer. And that's really about basic encryption of how the data is transferred back and forth. I think it's 256-bit. We use big words to show that it's there, but the 99% of what we do, we don't show because we don't want to advertise exactly what we're doing, because that then presents the opportunity of like, oh, they're using this, so we can do this. It's about creating more security. So you don't say exactly what you're doing.
So, I mean, you touched on not showing the security side, but you are you do offer more transparency than I think a lot of other major financial institutions are doing. How's that showing and reoccurring itself within Atmos?
Yeah, so we focus our transparency more on the impact of what we're doing and on our fees and so forth. And we want to really be transparent about what we pay and what we charge people for, which is very little, and the impact. So we say we have a carbon calculator essentially on there of like the impact, the carbon impact of your deposits. So you can see right now, until we sort of sign this first contract, which is in the works, unfortunately, these big banks and even the small banks, they don't move at the speed of a startup. We're ready to go. And it's like, okay, here's a contract. Oh, let's send it back to the lawyers for one more revision. So those are in the works and they're about to happen. And we're getting close on being able to deploy this first tranche of capital. But when we do that, we'll be able to say, your money helped fund this project. And it is 10 megawatts of solar, 100 megawatts of solar, and it's in this area, and it has replaced so much coal, oil, gas, etc., of other fossil generation, and that it's equivalent to this much CO2, tons of CO2 on an annual basis. So we want to show that. And then as we add more projects, whether that's residential rooftop solar, it's electric vehicles, it's regenerative agriculture, we're going to show the overall impact, and maybe also whether that's more societal benefits of economic upliftment or changes in ownership of a given area. It's still early days on what we can show, but we want to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, I saw that you're also pending a B Corp, which I think continues and adds to that sort of plus side to like another reason and level of transparency for people. How does what's I would love to hear how an institution or business like yourself is using B Corp, because I think it's a really interesting philosophy. You don't really see banks on that side of the certifications.
Right. And again, it sort of goes back to the aligning of incentives and building trust. And if we say that we're building a more equitable and green, verdant world, we want people to trust us, and people trust B Corps and the B Labs certification.
They do. I do.
Yeah, same here. Like if you see that, you're like, okay, they are putting their money where their mouth is, and saying it's not just, it's not just, hey, listen, trust what I say, but trust what I do, and trust, because we have to prove it out. So we're pending B Corp because we only launched in January, and you need 12 months in operation and to build out the business. So hopefully next January, we'll have crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and we will move from pending to full certification.
And I also see you're a member of 1% for the Planet. We are as well. And that's another area that another way I discovered the banking side of environmental action was through actually a post that I was spacing on her name. Carla's not the president. I was totally spacing on her name.
Kate.
Is Kate? Yes.
Yeah, Williams.
Kate Williams. Yep. She posted on their LinkedIn channels. I'm on LinkedIn constantly, I feel like, but was talking about their banking partners and just how, or banking members, and just how important it is to use your money for one, vote with your dollar, but also just use your money for environmental causes. And it seems like, putting my money with a company like Atmos is easier than trying to make all these tiny decisions in my home of like, okay, I can't use this product because I'm getting a plastic bottle every month. I'm getting this every month. I'm using, it just seems like it's the step number one in easy transactional change.
It's one of the lowest hanging fruit, and it's one of the highest leverage activities an individual can take.
Yeah.
En masse. Everyone's situation is slightly different. So if you have the word of the president or something like that, your leverage might be better used there. But for the most people, if you open an account with Atmos and move money over, 100% of those deposits will be used towards this end. If you live in an apartment and if your roof is your upstairs neighbor's floor, you can't put solar panels there. They're not going to work. But the money that you deposit into Atmos can be used to finance solar on other people's roofs. So you have this impact, and it's not like you're losing it. You're not spending it. It's sitting there. It is earning you money. Like we pay, our top rate is 10x the national average for savings accounts. So we pay people more for the privilege of us borrowing that money to lend towards this purpose. So we want to reward people for that. And it's 100% liquid. So it's not an investment directly into solar or anything like that, where you have to wait for 2, 3, 5, 10 years to make your money back. If you need it for whatever reason, you can pull it out via an ACH transfer. And soon, once we launch our checking account, you'll be able to pull it out via ATM or through spending it online or in physical locations. And tying into what you said earlier about voting with our dollars, and we most often use that about how and where we spend our money.
Exactly.
And so that has a great effect on the local economy. So I want to go to local small business versus national chain, and that really primarily affects the local economy and employment in your local area. But where we bank, voting with our dollars of where we bank can have global implications, because it's the banks who lend out our money for the infrastructure of the world. So the world that we live in is financed by our deposits. So changing where we deposit can change the world that we live in. So that's why we say vote with your dollars about where you bank. And it's the highest leverage activity that we can all do. And we also say you can have an open relationship with your bank. So you don't need to, we're not saying totally close your Bank of America account right now, but move over some of your money, and those dollars will be 100% aligned with what you want. And over time, if it works, you can move more of your money out of Bank of America once we have our checking account and offer other products that serve your needs.
Well, one of the things that that really drew me to Atmos and its a model is the convenience of making it easy to donate to nonprofits that are tied to you, and in addition to that, the interest yield that's incentivizing that, and also the lack of fees. How did you build that in? How were you able to sort of adjust the interest rate based on your continued or a customer's continued giving?
Right. So it is a unique proposition to us, and so right within your savings account right now, the Atmos Action Savings Account, you can donate either a fixed amount every month, 1 to 5, $10, $100 a month, or you can donate a percentage of that savings rate. And so we give 30, 35, 40 basis points, which is 1/100th. So 0.30, 0.35, or 0.4% as our tiered rates based on your deposit balance. And then on top of that, we give this 0.11% or 0.11% bonus if you elect to do one of these monthly recurring donations. And so if you have the you start off, you put in $100 and you're earning 0.3%, and you donate, now you're going to earn 0.41%. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to share 10% of that yield, that's 0.04%. So now you went from 0.3 up to 0.37, and you're donating 0.04. So we've effectively are paying for your donation. You're going to get the tax donation. So the money actually flows from your account. So we keep a transaction history of all of your donations. So when it comes to tax time, you have an itemized list for your taxes. And we also just launched one-time giving as well. So whether it's in honor of your birthday, an event next week is National Endangered Species Day. So we're doing a special promotion around Ventana Wildlife Society, who helped the California condor come back from near extinction. So we're giving additional money to them for new accounts that come through their landing page. So we want to give people more opportunities and more incentive to support these amazing nonprofits, whether it's endangered species, it's clean energy, it's water protection, it's job training, or helping the new innovations, new climate innovations come about. So there's organizations that will appeal to just about everyone, from the local all the way up to the national. And and it's been amazing to see and to read the notes that people send. It's like, oh, I've been looking for something like this in my area, but I haven't found it. But I see there's a local org on the other side of the country doing this, so I'm going to support that. Because so it's really cool to see the increasing awareness about these different orgs.
So you launched in January. Being a part of 1% for the Planet definitely, I'm sure, helps just with getting the name out and expanding your potential customer base. But I'm curious to how marketing a concept like this comes into play, because there's a level of education and there's a level of information that I don't think, like I was saying earlier, I don't think a lot of people understand how their money is being used within their big traditional banks now. So how are you bridging that gap and reaching people?
There's definitely an education component, and as you said, people don't understand what their money does, or that Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citi are the 4 largest funders of fossil fuel extraction in the world. And it's like, whoa, I didn't know that my money is being used for that. And so there's education just around that. The banks, like, our deposits don't just sit within a bank, whether it's physical in a physical vault or in a digital server somewhere. It gets lent out into the economy. And so there's education around that. And then there's the educational piece about how we might use that for climate positive infrastructure and changing society for the better. So there's that. And then we use there's our blog piece, some of that which you've written, and trying to, as people search for ethical banking, B Corp banks, we want to be found for those things. But also being a member of 1% and being one of the early banking members of 1%, we were invited by Kate and the team to speak on a panel at their recent event, the Sea Change Sessions. And so that's that's helped a lot as well, as like getting the word out by going to these events, going on to podcasts like this, to help people find us, but also just to help get people thinking about the power of their deposits, and that they are so high leverage because you can do so much for relatively little effort. It's 2 minutes to open an account and start moving some money.
Yeah, I was very surprised with how quick you have the process down, and I think it's great that you really promote that on the site as far as how easy it can be. Going back to the idea of convenience and making it really convenient and quick for people. But is there, if people are skeptical, and where can they find information on their bank as far as like where the money is, where the bank's invested in using that money? Are there organizations tracking this? Are there, transparency reports being put out from third parties?
It is really difficult. It would take Bank of America or Chase months by a incredibly large team to be able to tell you exactly what their entire asset base is. That they have $2 trillion in assets. That's like, what are they funding? Exactly.
Hard to comprehend how much 2 trillion is, right?
Right. And so, and this is spread across all of these different systems, computer system, physical systems. So it's incredibly complicated to know exactly. There is a website. There's an organization, the Rainforest Action Network, and they've put out a report every year. It's now called the Banking on Climate Chaos. And if you go to bankingonclimatechaos.org, they actually provide a report with a few other orgs about the top fossil fuel funding banks in the world. And I think it shows 20 or 30, the top 20 or 30 banks, or no, if you go deep into it, I think it's top 65.
Wow.
And so then you can see into some of those assets and what they hold and what the money does. And then there's a few other, there's a few other transparency type things around private prisons or war material and other things. I know back in the 80s there's similar work around the anti-apartheid movement of moving money out and what was getting funded and the companies there. And this goes into the divestment. It's another divestment campaign, and so this is what they're funding. Let's move our money out and pressure them to move more quickly. So long answer to say there aren't perfect reports, but you have these disparate groups working on different segments because it is so spread out.
So going back a little bit to the transparency factor, and how you can, I was playing around with the sort of gauge of if I put in $5,000 or $10,000, you can see the carbon that's offset, and I want to talk a little bit about carbon offsets, because I do think it's a kind of a confusing topic for me personally, and then I just have a feeling the general public as well. So the idea of carbon offsetting, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, is the idea that we, for whatever actions that we are doing, we can counterbalance that by either buying carbon credits personally or from like a broker, if you will, to invest either that money either then invested in ways to counteract that carbon, through like planting trees or no tilling of farmland or what have you, then to like when I go to the mailbox at UPS, I can click, yes, I'll charge you 90 more cents to offset the carbon of this product or this shipment. So I would love some clarity around that, and if I got that right, and how you're doing in working with that.
Yeah, say pretty much, pretty accurate on the description. And the idea is, what we used to be said and still is said is reduce what you can and offset the rest. And that's really about sort of the personal obligation to your own personal carbon footprint, and then or a corporate carbon footprint. And carbon offsets are a potentially an important part of of stopping climate change, and we need more of them. We need to stop cutting down trees and we need to plant more trees. Not just plant trees, we need to reforest and rewild areas, because the carbon offsetting programs, some of them has come out recently. There are a lot of potential problems with the carbon offset programs and carbon credit programs. Like if in a afforestation, reforestation program, you've gone from a native biodiverse area to a monocrop tree plantation, you're at a net negative in terms of both health and also in sequestration. That diversity gives resilience and health to the area. So in terms of longer term storage, you need different species working together. So there's that. There is the issue of different Audubon and forestry societies saying, hey, we've managed this pristine primeval forest for hundreds of years or 100 years, and you know what, if all of a sudden we might chop it down because you're going to pay us to not chop it down, so we're going to tell you. So now we've got these different environmental organizations essentially ransoming or holding hostage these nature preserves for the carbon credit programs, and then the fossil fuel industry are buying offsets, so they're allowed to promote more because because of this carbon credit program, which is going to forests which are supposedly going to be cut down but aren't really going to be cut down. And the other issues are, can you actually verify it? Like, you're saying, okay, this tree is going to grow at such a rate and will sequester so much carbon. Well, it's very expensive to do verification. There are new companies now like Pachama, which uses drones and satellite imaging and artificial intelligence to more accurately measure and verify a larger swath of forest area than a human can do. So there are some ways that we're getting towards it. Now we're doing more offsetting through direct air capture and some other longer term sequestration. So try not to ramble and rant too much but it's a very complicated and nuanced issue. But ultimately, I think what people should know is that we need to get to real zero, not net zero. And so don't just use a carbon calculator and offset your fossil fuel SUV and all of your fossil fuel appliances and lots and lots of air travel, but rather it's like, okay, can I do a Zoom call for that business meeting rather than fly across the country? Can I get an electric vehicle that will take the place of my internal combustion engine vehicle? Induction stoves cook better than gas stoves. Faster to heat up, better control, more even. So we need to replace these things. We need to do more clean energy. And then at that point, now let's look at offsets for what we can't do. But there's so much that we can do before we get to that point.
So specifically to Atmos and being a customer there, so how would my deposit then go into that idea of the carbon credit or the carbon offset?
Right. So there's sort of two sides to that. So one, your deposits are going to be used to help finance this infrastructure change.
Clean infrastructure.
Right. So as we're terming it, climate positive infrastructure. So clean energy. Gotcha. So these first projects will be utility scale solar, and so that is the pound per dollar deposited number that we use on the website. And we have a blog that explains that, and we'll continue to add to that as we add new projects and new information comes to change the equations.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that side of things. But then we want to help people get to real zero. So as we offer solar loans, building performance loans, electric vehicle loans, e-bike loans,
mm-hmm.
net zero energy mortgages, as we start adding in all of these things, we will help you to find the best deal and actually change towards these electric and clean energy powered machines,
mm-hmm.
Because they're usually better performing, more fun anyway. And if you look at an electric vehicle, they usually save anywhere from 50 to 80% on a per mile basis. And so there's lower maintenance costs. So on a total cost of ownership, they're already cheaper than the equivalent internal combustion engine vehicle. And in the next couple of years, we're going to see that on a sticker price basis, they're now cheaper as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to help get people along that way. So it's sort of this dual path.
Yeah, and so I know we're on time here, and I would love to just end. I know it's kind of an abrupt end going from that to this, but I have to be mindful that I know you have to jump off very soon here. And I always love this idea of like, what would you give yourself, your 25-year-old self, your 20-year-old self advice from now, if you could? I mean, for some reason, maybe I'm just at that point in my life now. I've been thinking about that more. I'm like, man, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. I have a lot of advice I would have given myself. I'm curious to what you would give yourself in that same sort of spirit.
Yeah. I started when I'm 39 now, and I started on this climate journey when I was 18. So
mm-hmm.
I've been in the space. If I have the power of going back in time to talk to myself, there's so many different things. Like, oh, launch this company and you'll do great. Invent this lithium battery technology. So I think, I would tell myself to focus on, being balanced.
Mm-hmm.
It would be taking care of my holistic self,
mm-hmm.
emotionally, because I see a lot of people come in and they hear and they're so terrified and upset. It's like, oh, I've got to do so much. And they push really hard, and there's a little bit of like a burnout period.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell myself that this is your mission for life. Like, this is how I've seen it for these 21 years now. This is a very long game, and play it that way, and do the utmost that you can. And it may not have worked out back then, but looking to start Atmos earlier,
mm-hmm.
I think would have only been beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped with the fintech revolution because there's so much more that we can each do,
mm-hmm.
And it's helping each other along this journey. Start with moving a little bit of money, maybe biking to work, and everything that we need to do on a personal note has to have a ripple effect, because we need everyone on board and we need to create systemic change.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't do what you do like in isolation. So tell people that you're getting an electric vehicle. Tell people that you're moving your money to Atmos. Tell people that you're concerned about climate change and want to see that you want to see an equitable shift in our society. Mm-hmm. That we can't just focus on one aspect, because it touches on everything, and there is no focus on the environment versus on racial justice. They are very intertwined. Where we situate our power plants has been primarily on racial lines. How we build our urban infrastructure has been along mm-hmm. racial lines. And so we need to bring all of that together and say, let's move together and we can stop our planet from continuing to warm. We can stop treating each other with malice, but we need to work together to do it. So do more and help each other out. That'd be my message to my 25-year-old self.
I think that's awesome advice, and I think you should save that play for your baby when they grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ravi, for joining us today. Congratulations on the firstborn coming. And I will definitely be joining Atmos. As soon as you get that checking account, I'm going to be there 100% because I just want to move it all at one time. So I'm looking forward to that day. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. This has been a great pleasure.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you liked the episode. Please head on over to the Apple Podcast app and leave a review. Or you're welcome to email me directly at j@weareunconquered.co. See you next week.